At 0500 hours, Ellsworth Air Force Base was a symphony of cold efficiency and military precision. The polished floors gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, reflecting the pre-dawn darkness outside. In the corner of the command center, barely noticed by anyone with rank insignias, Sophia Reeves moved with methodical purpose, her faded gray maintenance uniform hanging loose around her frame, rubber gloves and a worn baseball cap hiding any hint of the officer she once was. The morning crew filtered in with their pressed uniforms and confident strides. These weren't weekend reservists. These were elite operators, intelligence specialists, and strategic command officers. Their badges displayed security clearances. Their postures reflected years of disciplined service. Sophia knelt by the edge of a desk, spray bottle in one hand, microfiber cloth in the other. She might as well have been part of the furniture. "Look at that," Lieutenant Colonel Davis muttered to his subordinate, gesturing toward Sophia without bothering to lower his voice. "Maintenance got the cleaning crew started early today. Hope she remembers the conference room this time." The generals flying in from Pentagon at 0800, laughter rippled through the group. Not cruel exactly, but careless. The kind of casual dismissal that comes from people who've never had to clean up after others to survive. A young airman first. Class slapped hands with his teammate, pointing at Sophia. "Think they're hiring straight from the shelter now? At least she's staying busy." His companion chuckled, adjusting his uniform sleeve. "Maybe she'll teach us her dusting techniques during the next readiness drill." More laughter. Sophia's grip on the cloth tightened slightly, but her expression never changed. She continued her methodical cleaning, each pass of the rag leaving spotless surfaces behind. The American flag and Air Force emblem dominated the far wall, surrounded by framed photographs of distinguished service members and commanding officers throughout the base's history. Sophia paused beneath those photos for just a moment, her eyes tracing the faces before she turned back to her work. A newer officer, probably fresh from the academy, watched her with undisguised amusement. They could have at least given her a better uniform. "Looks like she wandered in from the street." The operations manager looked up from her tablet, efficient and impatient. "Can you finish this section in 20? The briefing starts at 0600 sharp." Sophia nodded once and kept moving. Her footsteps were silent on the tile, her scan systematic, checking for anything out of place, any detail that might disrupt the clockwork precision demanded by military operations. By 0545, the volume had tripled. Officers arrived with coffee in hand, greetings overlapped with status reports, and the digital wall clock ticked relentlessly toward the morning briefing. Sophia finished her final pass near the communications station. She emptied her cleaning solution without fanfare, folded her cloth with practiced precision. No one thanked her. No one even acknowledged she existed. What they couldn't see beneath that worn maintenance uniform was a woman who had once stood where those distinguished officers in the photos now hung, before life stripped everything away, before she learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is become invisible. She had been someone they would have recognized, someone they would have saluted. But that was before Kandahar, before the operation went sideways, before Colonel Sophia Reeves chose to disappear into the shadows of the very world that had once celebrated her. At least, that's what they thought. Sophia Reeves lived in a modest apartment on the forgotten side of Rapid City, where rent was manageable and neighbors minded their own business. Her one-bedroom space had uneven heating and a window that rattled with every prairie wind, but it was hers. In summer, the air carried hints of dust and sage from the plains. In winter, the ancient radiator clanked and sputtered like an old Humvee on rough terrain. She didn't mind. Quiet suited her now. Her morning started with instant coffee and plain toast. Same chipped mug. Same plate with the hairline crack. The only decoration was a single photograph by the door. Sophia in full dress uniform receiving. The Silver Star, standing proud beside General Maxwell, both smiling for the cameras. They looked invincible then. That was before the ambush. Before everything changed. General Maxwell had been leading a diplomatic convoy in Afghanistan when intelligence failed them. Sophia had stayed behind to coordinate communications. The IED took out the lead vehicle at 0317 hours. The metal was found 3 days later in the wreckage, somehow unscratched. Sophia kept the photo clean, the frame dust-free. It was the only thing she ever touched with care anymore. Her closet held just enough clothes for a week, but tucked on the bottom shelf beneath a stack of plain work shirts lay a neatly folded uniform and her service medals. She hadn't worn either since the inquiry, not because she'd stopped serving, but because something fundamental had shifted when she lost her commanding officer and friend. At night, after her neighbors had settled and the streets went quiet, Sophia pulled out a locked case from beneath her bed. Inside lay tactical equipment. Not military issue, but close enough. A set of night vision goggles, communication devices, maps and coordinates. She maintained everything with military precision, muscle memory from years of field operations guiding her hands. She ran drills by instinct, emergency protocols, evacuation procedures, security response sequences. Her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. Then came the laptop, secured with encryption that most intelligence officers would envy. She monitored patterns, analyzing threats that no one had assigned her to track, watching for shadows that military intelligence might miss. Sometimes she caught her reflection in the dark window, shoulders straight, jaw set, eyes focused with the intensity that had once made her one of the youngest field commanders in special operations. The city lights glimmered behind her like distant flares. When she finished, she'd sit in silence, eyes closed, finding the stillness that combat had never given her. This wasn't about staying sharp or maintaining skills. This was about remembering who she was beneath the grief and the betrayal. There were reminders of her past life scattered through the apartment like breadcrumbs. Mission briefs hidden in hollowed-out books, encrypted files detailing operations that never officially happened, commendations for service that had been redacted from public record, emails from former team members that she'd read but never answered. They asked if she'd ever consider returning to active duty. Most just said they missed her leadership. But the Colonel Sophia Reeves they remembered, the one who'd led extraction teams through hostile territory, who'd advised generals on tactical operations, who'd been on the short list for Pentagon assignment. That woman existed only in photographs now. The woman who cleaned floors at Ellsworth Air Force Base was someone different. Someone who'd learned that the greatest strength sometimes comes from being underestimated. Someone who was about to remind the military establishment why assumptions can be dangerous. Each night ended the same way. Sophia secured her equipment, encrypted her files, and wiped down her counters with tomorrow's cleaning cloth. She maintained operational readiness not to return to duty, but because the rhythm made sense when nothing else did. Tomorrow, like every morning for 18 months, she'd return to Ellsworth Air Force Base. She'd clean their offices, polish their floors, and move through their world like a ghost. They'd see her hands, her cart, her quiet efficiency, but they'd never truly see her. It was safer that way. Better the commander who'd once led classified operations in 12 countries, lived only in the folded uniform and sealed records. Woman who cleaned floors was building something different, a life where strength didn't require recognition, where purpose didn't need acknowledgement. She was invisible by choice now. And sometimes, invisible people see everything. By 0700 hours, Ellsworth Air Force Base hummed with purpose. The Operations Center managed a steady stream of communications, last-minute briefings, and calls that all began with Priority Alpha. Every surface had been disinfected, every trash can emptied, every floor polished to military standards. Sophia Reeves moved along the back wall, restocking supply cabinets with fresh notebooks and pens. She worked with mechanical efficiency, sorting items by size and function without looking up. Her hands moved like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Which they had. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Officers moved with heightened alertness. Communications specialists monitored channels with unusual focus, and security personnel conducted additional perimeter checks without explanation. Major Wilson clustered near the command office with several intelligence officers, comparing satellite imagery and speaking in low tones. The air smelled of coffee, nervous energy, and something metallic, the scent of impending crisis. Sophia paused beside the supply table, organizing a stack of folders that had slipped slightly off-center. A classified briefing document lay nearby, partially visible beneath a tactical map. She didn't need to read it, her peripheral vision had already captured the key points. When one folder slipped toward the floor, she caught it mid-fall without looking, refolded it perfectly, and continued her work. She'd already cleaned the conference rooms. Now she was setting the stage for everyone else to perform. "They're entering restricted airspace," someone called out, loud enough to shift the energy in the room. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Monitors flashed with new data. The entire command center seemed to inhale and hold its breath. Sophia didn't turn around, but she felt the change like barometric pressure before a storm. General Lawrence Harrington entered the command center with the controlled urgency of someone accustomed to crisis. His 4 stars gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and he moved with the slow deliberation of a man whose decisions affected thousands. 2 aides flanked him, one carrying a secure laptop, the other managing communications through an earpiece. Officers straightened as he passed, offering crisp salutes that he returned with practiced efficiency. "Status report," he demanded, voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Colonel Reynolds, the base commander, stepped forward. "Sir, we've got 2 unidentified aircraft that have penetrated the northern ADIZ. They're not responding to communications, and are maintaining course toward restricted airspace over the missile silos. Scramble the alert fighters," General Harrington ordered without hesitation. "Where's our cyber team? I want to know if this is connected to the systems breach from last week." "Sir, tech teams are reporting unusual activity across multiple security networks," another officer reported. "Possible coordinated cyber attack in progress." Sophia stepped away from the wall and walked toward her cleaning cart. A few officers moved aside automatically, more from muscle memory than courtesy. Behind her, someone whispered, "Maintenance needs to clear out. We're going to DEFCON 3 status." The comments weren't malicious, just procedural observations from people whose world revolved around protocol and clearance levels. Sophia disappeared into the supply closet and emerged with a clipboard, moving toward the exit as instructed. One of the security officers called out without looking in her direction, "All non-essential personnel need to exit immediately. Lockdown procedures in 5 minutes." Sophia nodded and headed toward the door. No one asked her name. No one noticed how she moved with perfect balance, how her posture remained centered even when carrying her supplies, how she stepped through crowded spaces without disrupting the operational flow. The crisis escalated quickly. Communications from the northern radar stations went dark. Base security reported anomalies in the perimeter sensors. The alert fighters were airborne, but reporting instrument malfunctions. "This is coordinated," General Harrington stated, his voice grim. "Someone's testing our response capabilities." The tension in the room tripled. Junior officers looked to their superiors for guidance. The security team moved with controlled urgency, checking weapons and communication devices. "Sir," Colonel Reynolds said, voice tight with concern, "we've lost contact with Missile Defense Command. Communications are down across all secure channels." General Harrington's expression darkened. "Backup systems?" "Also compromised." "We're isolated, sir." "How is that possible?" The general's question hung in the air, unanswered. Near the exit, a tech specialist called out an alarm. "Sir, the base security system is being accessed from an unauthorized terminal. Someone's bypassing all our protocols." The room froze. In military installations, external threats were expected, planned for, trained against. Internal breaches were the nightmare scenario. "Lock it down," Harrington ordered. "Find the source." Security personnel moved with practiced efficiency, checking credentials, securing terminals, establishing containment protocols. In the midst of the controlled chaos, no one noticed Sophia slip back through a service entrance, moving not toward the exit, but deeper into the facility. What none of them knew, what they couldn't see beneath the maintenance, uniform and quiet demeanor, was that they were in the presence of someone who had once designed half the security protocols they were now trying to protect. Someone who had trained special operations teams to penetrate similar facilities. Someone who was about to remind them that the most dangerous threats are often the ones you never see coming. The crisis found its rhythm quickly. General Harrington commanded the center of operations like a conductor before an orchestra, one hand on secure communications, the other gesturing toward the tactical display. His voice carried easily across the room, clear, decisive occasionally, punctuated by the kind of quiet intensity that kept panic at bay. 37 officers formed a coordinated response team around him, each handling different aspects of the escalating situation. The atmosphere was charged but controlled, exactly how military personnel are trained to function under pressure. "The key," Harrington explained, eyes on the satellite imagery, "is determining whether this is a diversion or the primary attack. We need to maintain defensive readiness across all sectors." Heads nodded throughout the command center. Officers moved between stations with purpose, coordinating responses that might determine national security outcomes. General Harrington paused, running a hand across his temple. "We need someone with deep knowledge of the integrated defense systems. The kind of expertise that can identify which vulnerabilities are being exploited." Colonel Reynolds nodded. Grimly, "Our best systems architect was transferred to Pentagon 6 months ago. The backup team is responding from Offutt, but they're at least 90 minutes out." "Unacceptable," Harrington stated flatly. "We need someone now." From the communications station, a lieutenant called out, "Sir, we've lost contact with the alert fighters. Radar is showing them returning to base, but we have no comms." "The entire northern sector grid is dark," another officer reported. "Backup systems failing to engage." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Military installations are designed with redundancies upon redundancies, yet somehow every backup system was failing simultaneously. This wasn't random, it was the digital equivalent of a surgical strike. Near the door, an airman spoke quietly into his radio, then approached the general with visible hesitation. "Sir, security is reporting a breach in the West Quadrant server room. Someone's accessed the main terminal." The implications hung in the air like a live grenade. The West Quadrant contained the hardened servers that controlled base security, communications, and defensive systems. Access required the highest clearance levels and multiple authentication factors. "How is that possible?" Colonel Reynolds demanded. "That area requires level 5 clearance and biometric confirmation." "Unknown, sir. The cameras are down." General Harrington's expression hardened. "Deploy the QRF. I want that server room secured immediately." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the West server room. Text only, coming through on the emergency backup channel." "Put it on screen," Harrington ordered. The main display flickered, then showed a simple text message. "Your systems have been compromised by hostile actors. Standard countermeasures will fail. Authorization protocol, Silver Shadow." The command center fell silent. Authorization protocols were classified information, known only to those with the highest security clearances. Silver Shadow? Colonel Reynolds repeated. That's a decommissioned protocol from 5 years ago. Who would even know that designation? General Harrington's eyes narrowed. Someone who helped design it. He turned to his aide. Who was the architect of the Silver Shadow protocol? The aide tapped rapidly on his tablet, then looked up with confusion. Sir, that would be Colonel Sophia Reeves. Special Operations. Command Cyber Division, but she's not active duty anymore. Honorable discharge 3 years ago following the Kandahar inquiry. Recognition flickered across Harrington's face. Reeves. I remember the name. Brilliant tactician. Designed half our integrated defense systems before she was scapegoated for the Kandahar failure. A quiet voice finished from the doorway. The entire command center turned as one. Sophia Reeves stood in the entrance, no longer in maintenance gray, but in black tactical gear. Her posture had transformed. Completely gone was the invisible cleaner, replaced by a woman whose presence commanded the room. She held a security badge in one hand, a tablet in the other. Colonel Reeves? General Harrington asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Former colonel, Sophia corrected, walking forward with measured steps. Currently, I'm the person who can stop this attack before you lose control of the entire missile defense network. The room watched in stunned silence as she approached the main console. Security personnel moved instinctively to intercept her, but General Harrington raised a hand, stopping them. You've been working as maintenance staff. For how long? He demanded. 18 months, sir. Long enough to document 12 critical vulnerabilities in your security systems that no one bothered to address despite my written reports. Her voice carried no accusation, just factual precision. The maintenance reports, a junior officer whispered. They were always so detailed, technical specifications included. Sophia didn't wait for permission. She moved to the central command console and began typing, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The attack signature matches a group we tracked 3 years ago. They're using your own defensive algorithms against you, creating feedback loops that trigger system shutdowns. Colonel Reynolds stepped forward, suspicion evident. How do we know you're not part of this attack? Sophia didn't look up from the console. Because if I wanted to compromise this base, Colonel, I would have done it 15 months ago when I first gained access to your command codes. The same codes you haven't changed despite security protocol requiring updates every 30 days. On the main screen, systems began to reactivate. Communication channels reopened one by one. I've isolated the intrusion and implemented countermeasures, Sophia explained, still typing. Your fighters will regain instrumentation in approximately 40 seconds. Northern sector grid will restore in 2 minutes. The missile defense network was never actually compromised. I created a simulation to make the attackers believe they had succeeded. General Harrington watched her work, recognition dawning in his eyes. You detected the attack before our systems did. Yes, sir. I've been monitoring unusual patterns in your network traffic for the past 3 weeks. When I confirmed an imminent threat, I needed to demonstrate how vulnerable your systems had become. She straightened, meeting his gaze directly. Sometimes the only way to make people listen is to show them exactly what they've been ignoring. The command center had stopped breathing. Officers who had walked past Sophia for months without a second glance now stared in disbelief. The security team that had dismissed her as just maintenance stood frozen, reassessing everything they thought they knew. You've been here the whole time, Colonel Reynolds said slowly. Watching, analyzing, protecting, Sophia corrected. Someone had to. On the screens around them, systems continued to come back online. The crisis was being contained. The attack repelled with an efficiency that would have required a team of specialists. yet was being accomplished by a single person they had all overlooked. What none of them had realized, what they couldn't have guessed from her quiet demeanor and maintenance uniform, was that Sophia Reeves had spent thousands of hours designing these very systems. She knew their vulnerabilities because she had built their foundations. She could defend them against attack because she understood their architecture at a level no one else could match. The woman they saw as hired help was about to remind them that expertise often hides in plain sight. General Harrington thought he was facing a catastrophic security breach requiring Pentagon intervention. What he was actually witnessing was a former officer who'd learned to fight in the shadows and who was about to show him exactly what that meant. The command center fell silent. Sophia Reeves stood at the main console, her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced precision. The tactical displays around the room showed defensive systems reactivating, communications restoring, and security protocols engaging. General Harrington approached, maintaining a respectful distance. "Walk me through what you've done, Colonel." "Former Colonel," Sophia corrected automatically, not looking up from her work. "I've initiated the Cerberus protocol, a defensive algorithm I designed before leaving service. It creates a quarantined environment, trapping the intrusion while rebuilding secure channels." Her explanation was technical but clear, the kind of briefing she would have given years ago when she commanded cyber operations. As she spoke, her body language shifted subtly, shoulders straightening, chin lifting, voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. "The attackers targeted 3 primary systems," she continued, pulling up diagrams. "On the main screen: communications, perimeter security, and command authentication. They used a previously undocumented vulnerability in the integration layer, something I flagged in my maintenance reports 3 months ago." Colonel Reynolds blinked, recognition dawning. "Those unusually detailed equipment assessments, that was you?" "Yes. Filed under Maintenance Requisition 1437B. I specified the exact vulnerabilities and recommended fixes." Her tone remained neutral, but the implication was clear. If they had paid attention, this crisis might have been prevented. General Harrington studied her with growing comprehension. "Why maintenance? With your background, you could have consulted, taught at the academy, worked private sector." Sophia's hands paused briefly over the keyboard. "After Kandahar, after the inquiry concluded, I should have anticipated the intelligence failure. Certain doors closed." She resumed typing, her focus unwavering. "But I never stopped serving, General. I just found a different way to do it." Around them, officers and technicians worked to implement her defensive measures, following instructions they barely understood, but recognized as effective. The atmosphere had transformed the crisis still unfolding, but now with direction and purpose. "Incoming communication from the alert fighters," a lieutenant announced. "They've regained full systems control." "Northern sector grid back online," another officer reported. "Perimeter security restored." Sophia nodded once, satisfaction evident only in the slight relaxation of her shoulders. "The immediate threat is contained. I've isolated the attack signature and created a forensic package for counterintelligence. You'll want to forward that to Fort Meade immediately." She stepped back from the console, the transformation complete. The invisible maintenance worker had vanished entirely, replaced by the commanding officer she had once been, and in many ways, still was. An awkward silence descended as the command staff struggled to reconcile the woman they had ignored for 18 months with the officer now standing before them. The security team that had dismissed her maintenance reports as overly technical now avoided eye contact. The lieutenants who had joked about the cleaning lady studied their screens with sudden interest. "You knew," General Harrington said quietly. "You knew an attack was coming." "I suspected," Sophia corrected. "I've been monitoring unusual patterns in the network traffic for weeks. When I confirmed a sophisticated intrusion attempt was imminent, I prepared countermeasures. Why not simply report it through official channels? Sophia met his gaze directly. Would you have believed the maintenance staff if they claimed to have identified a national security threat? Or would it have been dismissed as someone overstepping their position? The question hung in the air, unanswered but understood. In a hierarchical structure like the military, credibility was often tied to rank and position. As a cleaner, her warnings would have been ignored, just as her maintenance reports had been. Colonel Reynolds stepped forward, his expression a complex mixture of respect and discomfort. "How long have you been watching our systems?" "Since my first day on base," Sophia replied. "Your network security was the first thing I assessed." "Force of habit." "And you found it wanting," Reynolds concluded. "I found it consistent with standard military protocols," she said diplomatically, "which made it predictable to anyone who understands those protocols." At the communications station, a specialist raised her hand tentatively. "Ma'am, the countermeasures you implemented, they're not in any of our standard playbooks." "No," Sophia agreed. "They're adaptations I developed after leaving service. The attackers would have anticipated your standard responses." Understanding rippled through the room like a slow wave. This wasn't just about Sophia outsmarting the attackers. She had been thinking several steps ahead of Ellsworth's entire security apparatus for months, silently implementing protections no one had authorized, but everyone now depended on. General Harrington studied her with new eyes. "Colonel Reeves, former colonel," she corrected again. "Not anymore," he countered. "Your commission was never formally revoked, only placed on inactive status. Technically, you're still Colonel Reeves." Sophia's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps, or the ghost of an identity she thought she'd left behind. "With respect, sir," she said carefully, "I left that life behind for a reason. And yet here you are, defending this base as effectively as any officer under my command." Harrington gestured toward the screens, where her countermeasures continued to secure their systems. "Perhaps more effectively." The base security chief approached, tablet in hand. "Sir, Pentagon is requesting a full situation report. They're monitoring the attack signatures and want to know how we contained it so quickly." General Harrington looked at Sophia. "What should I tell them, Colonel?" The question wasn't just about the technical details of the cyber response. It was about how to explain that their most critical systems had been saved by someone they had collectively rendered invisible, a former high-ranking officer who had been cleaning their floors while quietly protecting their mission. It was about acknowledging a failure of perception that extended far beyond this single base, a system that had discarded one of its most valuable assets and never noticed when she continued serving anyway. Sophia considered the question, weighing options with the same tactical precision she brought to every problem. "Tell them you implemented Cerberus Protocol Alpha under the authorization of Silver Shadow clearance. They'll understand the implications." The security chief nodded and stepped away to relay the information. Around them, the command center continued its recovery operations, but now every eye tracked Sophia's movements, every ear attuned to her quiet instructions. "What happens now?" Colonel Reynolds asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. Sophia looked around the room, at the officers who had walked past her for 18 months without seeing her, at the system she had protected without recognition, at the mission she had never stopped serving despite everything that had happened. "That," she said simply, "depends on what you do with what you now know." The words carried no accusation, no resentment, just the clear-eyed assessment of someone who had learned to see truth without emotional distortion. She had never needed their acknowledgement to fulfill her duty. But now that they saw her clearly, the question was whether they would truly understand what they had been missing. General Harrington straightened, decision made. "Colonel Reeves, I'm temporarily assigning you to head our cybersecurity division, effective immediately. We'll sort out the paperwork later. Right now I need your expertise where it can do the most good." It wasn't an order, not exactly. It was an acknowledgement of reality. Sophia Reeves had already been protecting Ellsworth Air Force Base more effectively than anyone with official authority. The only difference now was that everyone knew it. Sophia didn't immediately accept or decline. Instead, she turned to the main tactical display, studying the attack patterns with professional detachment. You should know that this wasn't an encounter, isolated incident. The signature matches 3 other probing attacks on military installations in the past month. This is coordinated reconnaissance, likely state-sponsored. You've been tracking these attacks? Reynolds asked, surprise evident in his voice. Someone had to, she replied simply. The implication hung in the air. While officially designated security teams had missed the pattern, Sophia had been connecting dots that no one else even saw, all while being dismissed as just the cleaning lady. In that moment, everyone in the command center understood something fundamental. Rank insignias and official positions were poor indicators of capability. The most dangerous assumption in security work was believing you knew who mattered and who didn't. Sophia Reeves had reminded them that expertise often hides in plain sight, and that sometimes the person holding the mop might be the one person standing between them and catastrophic failure. By 0900 hours, word of the incident had spread throughout Ellsworth Air Force Base like wildfire through dry brush. Officers who hadn't been present during the crisis gathered in small clusters, exchanging details that grew more extraordinary. With each retelling, the maintenance worker who had thwarted a sophisticated cyber attack, the cleaner who outmaneuvered foreign hackers, the woman who had been invisible among them for 18 months. In the command center's auxiliary briefing room, General Harrington convened an emergency meeting with his senior staff. The atmosphere was charged with a mixture of embarrassment and urgent purpose. Sophia Reeves sat at the far end of the conference table, still in her tactical gear, a secure tablet resting beneath her fingertips. She maintained the same quiet efficiency that had characterized her work as maintenance staff, but the deference shown to her now created a stark contrast to the dismissive treatment of just hours earlier. Let's be clear about what happened. General Harrington began, his voice carrying the controlled gravity of a leader addressing a significant failure. Our systems were compromised in a way that bypassed every security protocol we had in place. Our response teams were ineffective. Our redundancies failed. If not for Colonel Reeves' intervention, we would be having a very different conversation right now, probably with the Joint Chiefs and National Security Council. Colonel Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Sir, with respect, our teams followed all standard procedures. That's precisely the problem. Sophia interjected, her voice quiet but carrying unmistakable authority. Standard procedures are predictable. Predictability is vulnerability. All eyes turned to her, the room falling silent. For many, this was the first time they had ever heard her speak beyond "yes, sir," or "right away." The attackers weren't just exploiting technical vulnerabilities, she continued, activating a holographic display above the center of the table. They were exploiting operational patterns, your routines, your hierarchies, your assumptions about who has access to what information. With practiced precision, she manipulated the display to show network traffic patterns, highlighting anomalies that had been present for weeks. These indicators were visible in your daily logs. Your security teams didn't see them because they weren't looking in the right places. Major Harrison, the head of base cybersecurity, leaned forward with a defensive edge to his posture. Those patterns fall within acceptable parameters, according to Pentagon guidelines. There was no reason to flag them. Guidelines are starting points, not substitutes for critical thinking, Sophia replied without heat. The attackers know your guidelines as well as you do. They designed their approach to stay just within acceptable parameters while mapping your entire system architecture. Harrison's face flushed. And how exactly would you have known to look for these specific patterns? Because I helped design similar penetration methodologies for our own offensive operations. She met his gaze directly before Kandahar. The room tensed at the mention of the operation that had ended her official career. Kandahar had become shorthand for intelligence failure, mission that resulted in the loss of General Maxwell and 2 diplomatic teams due to faulty intelligence that Sophia had been blamed for not catching. General Harrington cleared his throat. Colonel Reeves' expertise isn't in question here. The fact remains that she identified and neutralized a threat that our entire security apparatus missed. The relevant question is how we prevent this from happening again. With respect, sir, Sophia said. That's not the most relevant question. She stood, moving to the head of the table with the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. The most relevant question is, why did this attack happen now? Why target Ellsworth specifically? This wasn't random. This was reconnaissance for something bigger. She expanded the holographic display, showing similar attack patterns across 3 other military installations. These facilities have something in common with Ellsworth. They're all part of the Strategic Command's distributed defense network. They all received the same security update 3 weeks ago. And they all use the same contractor for systems integration. The implications settled over the room like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about one base, it was potentially about the entire missile defense infrastructure. How did you access this information? Major Harrison demanded. This is classified. At levels well beyond a maintenance worker's clearance, Sophia finished for him. Yes, it is. Yet I had no difficulty obtaining it, which itself should tell you something about your security protocols. General Harrington raised a hand, silencing further objections. Colonel Reeves, what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. Sir, I'm stating facts. Someone is systematically probing our strategic defense systems, using sophisticated methods that suggest state-level resources. They're patient, methodical, and they almost succeeded today because no one was looking at the complete picture. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. No one with authority, that is. The unspoken rebuke hung in the air. For 18 months, she had cleaned their offices, emptied their trash, and moved through their world unnoticed while simultaneously monitoring security threats they had missed. Colonel Reynolds cleared his throat. Why didn't you report these concerns? Through proper channels? I did, Sophia replied evenly. 6 maintenance requests over the past year, each detailing specific security vulnerabilities in technical language that should have raised flags with anyone paying attention. They were filed, acknowledged, and ignored. She pulled up the documents. On the display, each one showing a maintenance report with detailed technical specifications embedded within routine language about equipment needs and cleaning schedules. Jesus, someone whispered from the far end of the table. She was literally telling us the entire time. General Harrington studied the reports, his expression hardening. These were dismissed as a maintenance worker being overly technical. Did no one question why janitorial staff was submitting network architecture assessments? The silence that followed was answer enough. Assumptions about who had valuable input and who didn't had created a blind spot large enough to drive a national security breach through. That's the real vulnerability, Sophia said quietly. Not the technical flaws. It's the belief that expertise only exists within expected channels. That valuable information only comes from people with the right insignia or title. The door to the briefing room opened abruptly, and a young lieutenant entered with barely contained urgency. Sir, we've got incoming from Pentagon. General Mitchell is on Secure Line 1. He's asking for Colonel Reeves specifically. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. General Mitchell was Deputy Director of the National Security Agency, one of the highest-ranking intelligence officials in the country. Put him through, Harrington ordered, gesturing toward the secure communication terminal. The main screen activated. displaying the stern features of General James Mitchell, his 4 stars visible on each shoulder. His eyes immediately found Sophia. "Colonel Reeves," he said without preamble. "It's been a long time." 3 years, 2 months, General," Sophia replied with military precision. "Too long," Mitchell said, his usual formality softening slightly. "I just reviewed the preliminary report from Ellsworth. The Cerberus protocol implementation was impressive, particularly given the circumstances." "Thank you, sir." "That protocol was still in development when you left the service. You completed it on your own time?" "Yes, sir." "Along with several other defensive measures that weren't in the official pipeline." Mitchell nodded, as if confirming something he had suspected. "The attack signatures match those we've been tracking across multiple installations. Most bases haven't fared as well as Ellsworth. We have systems still offline at Peterson and Schriever." Sophia's expression remained neutral, but her posture straightened imperceptibly. "The integration vulnerability I identified, it's not isolated to Ellsworth, is it?" "No, Colonel, it is not." Mitchell's gaze shifted to include General Harrington. "We're looking at a coordinated attempt to map our entire strategic defense architecture. Sophisticated, patient, and till today largely successful. Because they knew exactly where to look," Sophia concluded. "Someone with intimate knowledge of our system's design." "That's our assessment as well." Mitchell leaned closer to the camera. "Colonel Reeves, I'm formally requesting your assistance in addressing this situation. Not as maintenance staff, not as a consultant, but as the officer you still are." The room fell completely silent. Every eye fixed on Sophia, waiting for her response. This wasn't just about restoring her rank or acknowledging her skills. It was about publicly reversing the narrative that had defined the last 3 years of her life. Sophia didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted to the window, where she could see the normal operations of the base continuing, airmen moving between buildings, security patrols making their rounds, the American flag snapping in the Dakota wind. For 18 months, she had been part of this world while remaining separate from it, serving without recognition. "What about Kandahar?" she asked finally, turning back to the screen. "The official record still states that I failed to properly vet intelligence that led to the loss of General Maxwell's team." Mitchell's expression tightened. "New information has come to light regarding that operation. Information that significantly alters our understanding of what occurred and who bears responsibility." "What kind of information?" General Harrington asked, leaning forward. "Classified," Mitchell replied firmly, "but sufficient to warrant a formal review of the inquiry's conclusions. Colonel Reeves' actions before, during, and after that operation are being reassessed in light of intelligence that wasn't available at the time." Sophia's composure wavered for just a moment, a fleeting vulnerability quickly masked by professional control. "I've spent 3 years believing I missed something that cost lives, that I failed my duty." "You didn't," Mitchell said simply. "And it's time to set the record straight. But right now, we have a more immediate concern. This attack on Ellsworth was a test run. Our analysts believe something larger is imminent, possibly within the next 72 hours. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from retrospection to urgent focus. This wasn't just about Sophia's redemption anymore, it was about national security. "I'll need full access to all system logs from the affected installations," Sophia said, shifting seamlessly into operational mode. "And direct communication lines with their security teams." "You'll have it," Mitchell confirmed, "along with a temporary reinstatement to active duty status, effective immediately. Paperwork is already being processed." Sophia nodded once, the gesture containing neither excitement nor hesitation, just the calm acceptance of necessary action. "I'll begin immediately, sir." "General Harrington," Mitchell continued, "I'm temporarily reassigning Colonel Reeves to head a special task force operating from Ellsworth. She need your full cooperation and resources. She have them, Harrington assured him without hesitation. As the call concluded, the room remained silent, the magnitude of what had just transpired settling over everyone present. In the span of a few hours, the woman they had ignored while she cleaned their offices had been revealed as not only a high-ranking officer but one whose expertise was now being sought at the highest levels of national security. Major Harrison was the first to speak, his earlier defensiveness replaced by awkward contrition. "Colonel Reeves, we owe you an apology. The way you were treated is irrelevant to the current situation," Sophia interrupted calmly. "We have work to do, Major. Apologies can wait until after we've secured our systems." Her response wasn't cold, but it was definitive, a commander refocusing attention on the mission rather than personal concerns. She turned to General Harrington. "Sir, I'll need a secure operations center and a team of your best analysts. And access to all maintenance records for the past 6 months." "Maintenance records?" Colonel Reynolds questioned. "Yes," Sophia confirmed. Because while everyone was focused on digital intrusions, no one was monitoring who had physical access to your server rooms. Sometimes the oldest techniques are still the most effective. As the meeting disbanded, officers filed out with new purpose, casting glances at Sophia that ranged from admiration to embarrassment. For many, it was the first time they had truly seen her, not as the background figure who cleaned their spaces, but as the expert who had been silently protecting them all along. In the corridor outside, 2 captains spoke in hushed tones. "Did you know?" the first asked. "About who she really was?" "No idea," the second admitted. "I passed her every day for months. Never even said good morning. She was right there, the whole time, watching everything. Makes you wonder who else we're not seeing." Inside the briefing room, Sophia remained with General Harrington, already pulling up system diagrams on the tactical display. "You could have said something," Harrington observed quietly. "At any point during these 18 months, you could have revealed your background. Would it have mattered?" Sophia asked, not looking up from her work. "Would my observations about security vulnerabilities have been taken more seriously coming from a disgraced former officer than from maintenance staff? Or would they have been dismissed as the bitter complaints of someone trying to regain relevance?" Harrington had no immediate answer, which was answer enough. "This was never about recognition, General," Sophia continued, her focus unwavering. "It was about continuing to serve in the only way available to me. The uniform changed, the title disappeared, but the duty remained the same. And yet you must have felt—" Harrington struggled to find the right word. "Invisible?" Sophia suggested, finally looking up from the display. "I did, but invisibility has advantages. People speak freely around those they don't truly see. They reveal vulnerabilities they would otherwise hide. Being underestimated creates opportunities that arrogance eliminates." She turned back to the system diagrams, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. "Now, if you'll excuse me, sir, I need to prepare for the briefing with the NSA team. We have approximately 70 hours before the next attack, based on the pattern recognition, and I intend to be ready." Harrington nodded, understanding the dismissal for what it was, not insubordination, but the natural authority of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done and how to do it. As he left, he glanced back to see Colonel Sophia Reeves fully in her element, coordinating a national security response with the same methodical precision she had once applied to cleaning their floors. The transformation was remarkable, not because she had changed, but because she hadn't. The expertise, the commitment, the leadership had always been there, hidden in plain sight behind a maintenance uniform and a quiet demeanor. The real change was in how everyone else now saw her, and in the uncomfortable recognition of how much they had missed by looking without truly seeing. Within hours, Ellsworth Air Force Base had transformed around Sophia Reeves. The small conference room adjacent to the command center became the nerve center for a nationwide security operation. Screens displayed system architectures from multiple military installations. Communication channels remained open with Pentagon and NSA teams. And a hand-selected group of analysts worked with focused intensity under Sophia's direct supervision. Officers who had barely acknowledged her existence now hung on her every word. Not the technical flaws. It's the belief that expertise only exists within expected channels. That valuable information only comes from people with the right insignia or title. The door to the briefing room opened abruptly, and a young lieutenant entered with barely contained urgency. "Sir, we've got incoming from Pentagon. General Mitchell is on Secure Line 1. He's asking for Colonel Reeves specifically." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. General Mitchell was Deputy Director of the National Security Agency, one of the highest-ranking intelligence officials in the country. "Put him through," Harrington ordered, gesturing toward the secure communication terminal. The main screen activated, displaying the stern features of General James Mitchell, his 4 stars visible on each shoulder. His eyes immediately found Sophia. "Colonel Reeves," he said without preamble. "It's been a long time." 3 years, 2 months, General," Sophia replied with military precision. "Too long," Mitchell said, his usual formality softening slightly. "I just reviewed the preliminary report from Ellsworth. The Cerberus protocol implementation was impressive, particularly given the circumstances." "Thank you, sir." "That protocol was still in development when you left the service. You completed it on your own time?" "Yes, sir." "Along with several other defensive measures that weren't in the official pipeline." Mitchell nodded, as if confirming something he had suspected. "The attack signatures match those we've been tracking across multiple installations. Most bases haven't fared as well as Ellsworth. We have systems still offline at Peterson and Schriever." Sophia's expression remained neutral, but her posture straightened imperceptibly. "The integration vulnerability I identified, it's not isolated to Ellsworth, is it?" "No, Colonel, it is not." Mitchell's gaze shifted to include General Harrington. "We're looking at a coordinated attempt to map our entire strategic defense architecture. Sophisticated, patient, and till today largely successful. Because they knew exactly where to look," Sophia concluded. "Someone with intimate knowledge of our system's design. That's our assessment as well." Mitchell leaned closer to the camera. "Colonel Reeves, I'm formally requesting your assistance in addressing this situation. Not as maintenance staff, not as a consultant, but as the officer you still are." The room fell completely silent. Every eye fixed on Sophia, waiting for her response. This wasn't just about restoring her rank or acknowledging her skills, it was about publicly reversing the narrative that had defined the last 3 years of her life. Sophia didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted to the window, where she could see the normal operations of the base continuing, airmen moving between buildings, security patrols making their rounds, the American flag snapping in the Dakota wind. For 18 months, she'd been part of this world while remaining separate from it, serving without recognition. "What about Kandahar?" she asked finally, turning back to the screen. "The official record still states that I failed to properly vet intelligence that led to the loss of General Maxwell's team." Mitchell's expression tightened. "New information has come to light regarding that operation. Information that significantly alters our understanding of what occurred and who bears responsibility." "What kind of information?" General Harrington asked, leaning forward. "Classified," Mitchell replied firmly, "but sufficient to warrant a formal review of the inquiry's conclusions. Colonel Reeves' actions before, during, and after that operation are being reassessed in light of intelligence that wasn't available at the time." Sophia's composure wavered for just a moment, a fleeting vulnerability quickly masked by professional control. "I've spent 3 years believing I missed something that cost lives, that I failed my duty." "You didn't," Mitchell said simply. And it's time to set the record straight. But right now, we have a more immediate concern. This attack on Ellsworth was a test run. Our analysts believe something larger is imminent, possibly within the next 72 hours. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly from retrospection to urgent focus. This wasn't just about Sophia's redemption anymore, it was about national security. I'll need full access to all system logs from the affected installations, Sophia said, shifting seamlessly into operational mode. And direct communication lines with their security teams. You'll have it, Mitchell confirmed. Along with a temporary reinstatement to active duty status, effective immediately. Paperwork is already being processed. Sophia nodded once, the gesture containing neither excitement nor hesitation, just the calm acceptance of necessary action. I'll begin immediately, sir. General Harrington, Mitchell continued. I'm temporarily reassigning Colonel Reeves to head a special task force operating from Ellsworth. She need your full cooperation and resources. She have them, Harrington assured him without hesitation. As the call concluded, the room remained silent, the magnitude of what had just transpired settling over everyone present. In the span of a few hours, the woman they had ignored while she cleaned their offices had been revealed as not only a high-ranking officer, but one whose expertise was now being sought at the highest levels of national security. Major Harrison was the first to speak, his earlier defensiveness replaced by awkward contrition. Colonel Reeves, we owe you an apology. The way you were treated is irrelevant to the current situation, Sophia interrupted calmly. We have work to do, Major. Apologies can wait until after we've secured our systems. Her response wasn't cold, but it was definitive, a commander refocusing attention on the mission rather than personal concerns. She turned to General Harrington. Sir, I'll need a secure operations center and a team of your best analysts. And access to all maintenance records for the past 6 months. Maintenance records? Colonel Reynolds questioned. Yes, Sophia confirmed. Because while everyone was focused on digital intrusions, no one was monitoring who had physical access to your server rooms. Sometimes the oldest techniques are still the most effective. As the meeting disbanded, officers filed out with new purpose, casting glances at Sophia that ranged from admiration to embarrassment. For many, it was the first time they had truly seen her, not as the background figure who cleaned their spaces, but as the expert who had been silently protecting them all along. In the corridor outside, 2 captains spoke in hushed tones. Did you know? The first asked. About who she really was? No idea, the second admitted. I passed her every day for months. Never even said good morning. She was right there. The whole time, watching everything. Makes you wonder who else we're not seeing. Inside the briefing room, Sophia remained with General Harrington, already pulling up system diagrams on the tactical display. You could have said something, Harrington observed quietly. At any point during these 18 months, you could have revealed your background. Would it have mattered? Sophia asked, not looking up from her work. Would my observations about security vulnerabilities have been taken more seriously coming from a disgraced former officer than from maintenance staff? Or would they have been dismissed as the bitter complaints of someone trying to regain relevance? Harrington had no immediate answer, which was answer enough. This was never about recognition, General, Sophia continued, her focus unwavering. It was about continuing to serve in the only way available to me. The uniform changed, the title disappeared, but the duty remained the same. And yet you must have felt. Harrington struggled to find the right word. Invisible? Sophia suggested, finally looking up from the display. I did. But invisibility has advantages. People speak freely around those they don't truly see. They reveal vulnerabilities they would otherwise hide. Being underestimated creates opportunities that arrogance eliminates. She turned back to the system diagrams, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Now if you'll excuse me, sir, I need to prepare for the briefing with the NSA team. We have approximately 70 hours before the next attack, based on the pattern recognition, and I intend to be ready." Harrington nodded, understanding the dismissal for what it was not insubordination, but the natural authority of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done and how to do it. As he left, he glanced back to see Colonel Sophia Reeves fully in her element, coordinating a national security response with the same methodical precision she had once applied to cleaning their floors. The transformation was remarkable not because she had changed, but because she hadn't the expertise, the commitment, the leadership had always been there, hidden in plain sight behind a maintenance uniform and a quiet demeanor. The real change was in how everyone else now saw her and in the uncomfortable recognition of how much they had missed by looking without truly seeing. Within hours, Ellsworth Air Force Base had transformed around Sophia Reeves. The small conference room adjacent to the command center became the nerve center for a nationwide security operation. Screens displayed system architectures from multiple military installations. Communication channels remained open with Pentagon and NSA teams, and a hand-selected group of analysts worked with focused intensity under Sophia's direct supervision. Officers who had barely acknowledged her existence now hung on her every word. Security personnel who had once joked about the cleaning lady now stood at attention when she entered a room. The shift wasn't just about protocol or rank, it was about genuine respect for expertise that had been there all along, waiting to be recognized. At 1700 hours, as the Dakota sun cast long shadows across the base, Captain Lavra Chun, one of the cybersecurity specialists assigned to Sophia's task force, approached with barely contained excitement. "Colonel, I think I've found something," she said, tablet in hand. "A pattern in the maintenance logs, just like you suggested." 3 civilian contractors accessed server rooms across 4 different installations within 48 hours of each intrusion attempt. Sophia studied the data, a slight nod the only indication of approval, cross-referenced their background checks. "Look for inconsistencies, however minor." "Already did," Chun replied with new confidence. "One of them has 3 different home addresses listed on different forms. Another has employment gaps that weren't flagged during vetting." "Good work, Captain," Sophia said simply. Chun hesitated, then asked the question that had been circulating among the junior officers all day. "Ma'am, may I ask, how did you know to look at the maintenance logs?" Everyone else was focused on the digital signatures. Sophia's expression softened slightly. "Because I spent 18 months as maintenance staff, Captain. I saw how people treated the cleaning crew, the repair technicians, the food service workers. I saw who bothered to check credentials and who didn't. I saw which secure areas were left unmonitored during shift changes." She gestured toward the base schematics displayed on the main screen. Military installations focus enormous resources on preventing digital intrusions while often overlooking the humans walking their hallways. The most sophisticated firewall in the world won't stop someone with a maintenance badge and a friendly smile. Chun absorbed this with thoughtful consideration. "No one questioned you, even when you submitted those technical maintenance reports." "No one questioned me because no one truly saw me," Sophia corrected. "I was background noise, part of the infrastructure. That's the vulnerability I'm exploiting now, because if our people have this blind spot, our adversaries have already identified it and are using it against us." Across the room, the secure communication terminal activated. General Mitchell's face appeared on screen, his expression grim. "Colonel Reeves, we have confirmation. 3 more installations are reporting anomalous system behavior consistent with the attack profile you identified. Preliminary assessment suggests they're laying groundwork for something significant, possibly within the next 24 hours. Not 72 as we initially estimated." Sophia moved to the terminal, her stride purposeful. "The maintenance contractors we identified, have they been located?" 2 are in custody. One is missing. Last known location was Peterson Air Force Base, approximately 6 hours ago. The implications were clear. The timeline had accelerated. Whatever was coming was already in motion. Sir, I recommend immediate implementation of Cerberus protocol. Across all strategic command installations, Sophia stated without hesitation. It's not a perfect solution, but it will buy us time to identify and neutralize the primary threat vectors. Mitchell nodded. Already in progress, based on your earlier recommendation. Pentagon has authorized full countermeasures under your direction. Whatever resources you need, Colonel, they're yours. As the call ended, Sophia turned to the assembled team, their faces showing a mixture of determination and apprehension. For many, this was their first encounter with a threat of this magnitude, a coordinated attack on America's strategic defense infrastructure. This isn't just about technology, she told them, her voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. This is about perception, about seeing what others miss because they're looking in expected places. Each of you is selected for this task force because you've demonstrated the capacity to think beyond standard protocols. She moved to the center of the room, commanding attention without effort. For the next 24 hours, I need you to forget everything you think you know about how attacks happen. Forget the playbook. Forget the hierarchy. Question every assumption. Look where no one else is looking. As the team dispersed to their assignments with renewed purpose, Colonel Reynolds approached Sophia, his expression thoughtful. You know, he said quietly, for 18 months, you were right here monitoring our systems, identifying vulnerabilities, essentially doing the job of an entire security division while also cleaning our offices. And not one of us noticed. That was the point, Sophia replied. If I could move through this base undetected while actively protecting it, imagine what someone with malicious intent could do. Reynolds nodded slowly. It's not just about the technical vulnerabilities, is it? It's about the human ones. The assumptions we make about who matters and who doesn't. Precisely. Sophia's gaze swept across the operations center, taking in the focused activity of a team now fully engaged with a mission they understood. The most dangerous weakness in any security system isn't in its technology, it's in the minds of the people operating it, in who they see as threats and who they render invisible. Like a cleaning lady with a classified military background and cybersecurity expertise, Reynolds acknowledged. Or a maintenance contractor with falsified credentials and access to server rooms, Sophia countered. Invisibility works both ways, Colonel. We just have to learn to see what's hiding in plain sight before our adversaries exploit it. As night fell over Ellsworth Air Force Base, lights burned in the command center where Sophia Reeves led a team now racing against an unseen clock. The woman who had moved silently through their midst for 18 months now stood at the center of a national security operation. Her expertise finally recognized, her warnings finally heeded. The crisis was far from over. The true test of their systems and of their ability to see beyond assumptions was still to come. But something fundamental had already changed, not just in how they saw Colonel Sophia Reeves, but in how they understood the nature of expertise itself. The cleaning lady they had ignored for years had become their most critical asset in a moment of crisis, and in doing so, she had taught them the most important lesson in security, that greatness often hides in plain sight, waiting for the moment when it is needed most. 3 days after the initial breach, Ellsworth Air Force Base had transformed into the nerve center of a nationwide security operation. What had begun as a single base's vulnerability had expanded into the discovery of a sophisticated, multi-layered attack on America's defense infrastructure, one that might have succeeded if not for the vigilance of a woman everyone had overlooked. Colonel Sophia Reeves stood at the center of operations, her former maintenance uniform replaced by standard tactical gear, her quiet efficiency now recognized as the disciplined focus of an elite officer. Around her, A team of specialists worked with precise coordination, each understanding the gravity of what they were confronting. "Status report," Sophia requested, her voice carrying the calm authority that had always been present, but rarely. "Acknowledged." Captain Chun stepped forward, tablet in hand. "We've identified and contained intrusion attempts at 14 installations across the Strategic Command Network. The Cerberus protocol is holding, but they're adapting, trying new access points every 4 hours. They're persistent," Colonel Reynolds observed from nearby, "and well-resourced." "They're desperate," Sophia corrected. "The accelerated timeline suggests they know we've identified their methods. They're rushing what should have been a more gradual approach." She moved to the main tactical display, manipulating the holographic interface with practiced precision. The screen showed a map of military installations across the country, each highlighted with security status indicators. Most glowed steady. Green, indicating successful defense. 3 pulsed yellow, ongoing containment. 1 flashed red. "Peterson is still compromised," Sophia noted, eyes narrowing. "Why?" Major Harrison, who had been coordinating with Peterson's security team, stepped forward. "Their systems are older, Colonel. Pre-integration update. The Cerberus protocol isn't fully compatible. Or they have a physical breach we haven't identified," Sophia countered. "The missing contractor was last seen there. Has the base conducted a full personnel sweep?" "They report all personnel accounted for. All personnel they're looking." "Oh," Sophia emphasized. "Check maintenance staff, food service workers, cleaning crews. Anyone who might move through secured areas without drawing attention." As Harrison moved to implement her orders, the secure communication terminal activated. General Mitchell's face appeared, looking more strained than during their previous conversation. "Colonel Reeves, we have a situation developing at NORD. Their deep monitoring systems are detecting anomalies that match the signature you identified, but at a scale we haven't seen before. Early assessment suggests they're attempting to access the early warning network." The implications settled over the room like a heavy shadow. The North American Aerospace Defense Command controlled the systems designed to detect and track potential nuclear threats. Compromising those systems could blind the United States to an actual attack, or worse, generate false alerts that could trigger catastrophic responses. "Estimated timeline?" Sophia asked, already pulling up NORD's system architecture on her. "Display, unknown. The security team is implementing your protocols, but report resistance within the system. Something's already embedded that's fighting back." Sophia's expression remained composed, but her posture straightened almost imperceptibly. "I need to go there, directly." "Already arranged," Mitchell confirmed. "Transport is waiting on your airfield. Ada to Cheyenne Mountain is 90 minutes. Their command is expecting you." As the call ended, Sophia turned to Colonel Reynolds. "You'll coordinate from here. Captain Chun will serve as your technical lead. Maintain the containment protocols we've established and continue monitoring for new intrusion vectors." Reynolds nodded, accepting the responsibility without hesitation, a stark contrast to how he had dismissed her maintenance reports just days earlier. "We've got this, Colonel. Go save NORAD." Sophia gathered her essential equipment with practiced efficiency. As she prepared to leave, she paused beside a junior lieutenant who had been with the team since the beginning, a young officer who had once walked past her cleaning supplies without a second glance, but now watched her with undisguised admiration. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "what's the most important lesson you've learned these past 3 days?" The young officer considered the question seriously. "That expertise doesn't always wear the uniform or rank we expect, ma'am." Sophia nodded slightly. "Remember that. Long after this crisis ends, remember to look for capability in unexpected places. It might save your life someday." With those words, she strode from the command center, leaving behind a team forever changed by their encounter with the cleaning lady who had become their most vital asset. The flight to Colorado Springs passed in focused preparation. Sophia reviewed NORAD's system architecture, identifying potential vulnerabilities and developing response strategies. The helicopter crew maintained a respectful distance, occasionally casting glances at the woman whose reputation had spread throughout the military in a matter of days. As they approached Cheyenne Mountain, the massive complex came into view, a fortress built into solid rock, designed to withstand nuclear attack and house the nation's most critical defense systems. Even from the air, the heightened security was evident. Additional guards patrolled the perimeter, and communication antennas were fully deployed in emergency configuration. The helicopter touched down on the landing pad where a reception committee awaited, not the standard greeting for a visiting officer, but the urgent welcome for a specialist arriving at a crisis point. General Marcus Townsend, NORAD's deputy commander, stepped forward as Sophia disembarked. "Colonel Reeves," he greeted, extending his hand. "Your reputation precedes you. Recent reputation or old one?" Sophia asked with unexpected directness. Townsend's expression shifted to something resembling respect. "Both. I worked with General Maxwell before Kandahar. He spoke highly of you then. And what you've accomplished at Ellsworth speaks for itself." He led her toward the mountain entrance, speaking rapidly as they walked. "Situation is deteriorating. Our systems are detecting anomalies across multiple networks. Defense protocols are engaging but meeting sophisticated countermeasures. It's like the system is fighting itself." "Because it is," Sophia replied as they entered the first security checkpoint. "Based on the pattern analysis, they've likely inserted dormant code during routine updates over the past 6 months. Now they're activating it systematically." Inside the mountain complex, they moved efficiently through security layers, each more stringent than the last. Officers and technical staff stepped aside as they passed, word of Sophia's arrival having spread through the facility. Some watched with curiosity, others with undisguised relief. The expert who had contained similar attacks was now within their walls. The command center of NORAD was a technological marvel, screens displaying real-time data from sensors across the globe, officers monitoring potential threats, technicians maintaining the complex systems that served as America's early warning network. But beneath the normal operational rhythm, tension vibrated like a plucked wire. "We've isolated critical systems on redundant hardware," explained Colonel Janet West, head of cybersecurity, as she joined them. "But the intrusions keep finding new pathways. It's like they know our architecture intimately." "They do," Sophia confirmed, moving directly to the main security console. "May I?" West stepped aside, and Sophia's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision. Screens shifted, displaying code structures and system logs that few people at NORAD could interpret with such fluency. "There," she said after several minutes of intense focus. "The integration layer between your radar systems and threat assessment protocols. They've inserted a data manipulation module that can selectively filter incoming information, meaning they could make incoming threats invisible to us," General Townsend concluded grimly. "Or create false positives," Sophia added. "Either scenario achieves their objective, compromising your ability to distinguish actual threats from phantom ones." She continued working, diving deeper into system architecture that she hadn't directly accessed in years, but still understood at a fundamental level. Around her, NORAD's best technical experts watched with a mixture of professional interest and growing respect. "The insertion point is clever," she observed. "It's coming through the maintenance verification protocol systems, designed to confirm that other systems are functioning correctly." "The watchman watching the watchman," West murmured. "Exactly. And it's exploiting credentials that appear legitimate maintenance, access codes that would normally be used for routine system checks." Sophia straightened, turning to face General Townsend directly. I need to implement a non-standard countermeasure. It will temporarily take some of your monitoring systems offline while it purges the intrusion. How temporary? Townsend asked, the weight of command evident in his voice. NORAD couldn't afford blind spots in its vigilance, even briefly. 17 minutes for the primary systems. Secondary redundancies will remain functional, but at reduced capacity. Townsend exchanged glances with Colonel West, both understanding the gravity of the decision. Reducing NORAD's monitoring capabilities, even temporarily, was not something done lightly. But the alternative, allowing the intrusion to potentially control what they could and couldn't see, was far worse. Do it, Townsend authorized. Sophia nodded once and returned to the console, fingers flying across the keyboard as she implemented the Cerberus protocol with modifications specific to NORAD's unique architecture. On the main display, systems began cycling down in controlled sequence, each momentarily flashing red before stabilizing in amber standby mode. 17 minutes, Sophia announced as the countdown began. During this window, we're more vulnerable than we've been in decades. I suggest elevating alert status for all response forces. Townsend was already issuing the orders, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. Around the command center, officers moved with heightened urgency, implementing contingency measures designed for exactly this scenario but rarely executed. As the systems underwent their forced reset and purge, Sophia stepped back from the console, her focus unwavering. For the first time since arriving, she took a moment to observe the people around her, the dedicated professionals responsible for maintaining America's first line of defense. They moved with purpose, each understanding their role in a complex operational machine. Colonel West approached, offering a cup of coffee. The team tells me you designed most of these security protocols before leaving service, she said, professional. Curiosity evident in her tone. Some of them, Sophia acknowledged, accepting the coffee with a nod of thanks. The core architecture, at least. They've evolved since then. Not enough, apparently, West observed. If you hadn't identified this intrusion method at Ellsworth. She left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. The consequences could have been catastrophic. It wasn't just me, Sophia replied. The signs were there for anyone looking in the right places. The problem is that we train our people to look where we expect threats to appear, while the real vulnerabilities often hide in plain sight, West concluded thoughtfully, like maintenance protocols or cleaning staff with classified backgrounds. A ghost of a smile touched Sophia's lips. Word travels fast. In our world, like lightning. Half the officers in this mountain know you spent 18 months mopping floors while secretly protecting Ellsworth from cyber threats. The other half are still trying to process how that's possible. It's possible because we create blind spots based on our assumptions, Sophia said, watching the countdown timer on the main display. We see what we expect to see and miss what doesn't fit our mental models. On the screen, the timer showed 7 minutes remaining. Systems were beginning to report successful purges, security protocols reinstating with clean baselines. The operation was working. Colonel Reeves, General Townsend called from across the command center. We're getting reports of similar intrusion attempts at 3 other facilities, all strategic command installations. All happening right now. Sophia moved quickly to join him. At the strategic display, they're testing our response capacity, seeing if we can defend multiple locations simultaneously. Can we? Yes, she said with quiet confidence. Because now we know where to look. She turned to Colonel West. Implement the modified Cerberus protocol at all 3 locations. Focus on maintenance verification systems and integration layers. That's where they'll try to hide. As West moved to execute the orders, Sophia returned her attention to NORAD systems, now showing mostly green status indicators as they came back online with clean protocols. The 17-minute vulnerability window was closing without incident. We were lucky, Townsend observed, cutting to stand beside her. Not lucky, Sophia corrected. Prepared. Your teams executed perfectly once they understood the threat vector. Final systems returned to full operational status, completing the security purge. Around the command center, tension visibly decreased as normal monitoring capabilities were restored, now protected by enhanced security protocols that would prevent similar intrusions. All systems show clean, reported the lead technician. No anomalies detected. Whatever they inserted has been purged. Sophia nodded, satisfied but not relaxed. Maintain elevated monitoring of the integration layers. They'll try again with modified methods. Colonel West called from the communication station. Pentagon is requesting direct connection. General Mitchell and the Joint Chiefs want a briefing. As Sophia moved toward the secure terminal, General Townsend placed a hand briefly on her shoulder, a gesture of respect between senior officers. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I never believed the official story about Kandahar. Neither did most people who knew Maxwell. He wouldn't have wanted you cleaning floors for 18 months. Sophia met his gaze directly. Sometimes the most important work happens where no one's looking. General, the secure connection established, displaying General Mitchell alongside the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense. Their expressions showed the gravity of the situation, but also unmistakable relief. Colonel Reeves, Mitchell began without preamble. Your countermeasures at NORAD were successful. Preliminary assessment shows all intrusion attempts contained. The other facilities report similar results implementing your protocols. The immediate threat is neutralized. Sophia confirmed. But this was coordinated and sophisticated. They'll adapt and try again, which is why we need you to continue leading this effort, the Secretary of Defense interjected. Not from Ellsworth or NORAD, but from Strategic Command Headquarters. We're establishing a dedicated task force under your direction to address these vulnerabilities across our entire defense infrastructure. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs nodded in agreement. Your unique perspective, having seen our systems both from the highest levels of access and from the maintenance floors, gives you insights no one else in our command structure possesses. It was an extraordinary acknowledgement. Recognition not just of her technical expertise, but of the value that had come from her time and invisibility. There's also the matter of Kandahar, Mitchell added, his tone shifting to something more personal. The review board has completed its reassessment based on recently declassified intelligence. Their findings are unequivocal, Colonel. You were not responsible for the intelligence failure that led to the loss of General Maxwell's team. Sophia's composure wavered momentarily. The weight of 3 years of self-recrimination suddenly lifted. Sir, the intelligence was deliberately manipulated before it reached your analysis team, Mitchell explained. Part of a deeper operation that remains classified. But the record will be corrected, Colonel. Your name will be cleared. The command center around her had gone quiet, everyone aware they were witnessing a moment of profound significance. Not just for Sophia personally, but for the integrity of the system they all serve. Thank you, sir. Sophia replied, her voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes. But right now, we have more immediate concerns. Always the professional, Mitchell observed with approving recognition. Transport is being arranged to bring you to Strategic Command HQ. Your team from Ellsworth will join you there. In the meantime, continue coordination with NORAD to ensure their systems remain secured. As the call ended, Sophia found herself at the center of attention in a command center filled with officers who now looked at her with newfound respect. Not just for her technical abilities or her rank, but for her dedication to a mission that had continued even when the system had failed her. Colonel West approached, extending her hand. Whatever resources you need while you're here, Colonel Reeves. They're yours. My team is at your disposal. Thank you, Sophia said, accepting the handshake. I'll need access to your maintenance logs for the past 12 months. And I'd like to meet with your non-commissioned personnel, particularly those responsible for facility operations and security checkpoints. West raised an eyebrow but nodded without question. Of course. May I ask why? Because they see things the rest of us miss, Sophia explained. The officer at the security desk focuses on credentials and protocols. The maintenance technician who changes the light bulbs in that same area notices who combs through repeatedly, who seems nervous, who doesn't belong. She gestured toward the command center around them. In a facility this critical, everyone is a sensor. Everyone is part of the security apparatus, whether they realize it or not. We just haven't been listening to all of them, General Townsend, overhearing the conversation, nodded with growing understanding. Just as we didn't listen to your maintenance reports at Ellsworth. Exactly, Sophia confirmed. The information we need is often already in our possession. We just discount it because of who provided it or how it was presented. As she moved through NORAD's command center toward the technical briefing room, officers and enlisted personnel alike stepped aside with respectful nods. Word of her story had spread throughout the facility. The decorated officer who had spent 18 months cleaning floors while secretly protecting her base, now leading the defense of America's most critical systems. But what resonated most wasn't just her technical expertise or her dramatic return from obscurity. It was the humility and dedication that had driven her to serve without recognition, to protect a system that had failed her, simply because it was her duty to do so. In the technical briefing room, Sophia found a team of specialists already assembled, awaiting her guidance. They watched with focused attention as she outlined the threat vectors and countermeasures, explaining patterns that had taken her months to identify. The key, she emphasized, is understanding that our greatest vulnerabilities aren't technological, they're psychological. We create blind spots based on hierarchy, specialization, and assumptions about where expertise resides. She pulled up images of the maintenance reports she had submitted at Ellsworth, detailed technical assessments disguised as routine requests for supplies and equipment repairs. These contained explicit warnings about system vulnerabilities. They were filed, acknowledged, and ignored because of who submitted them. The room fell silent, the lesson unmistakable. Moving forward, Sophia continued, we implement a new protocol, one that evaluates information based on its content, not its source. One that recognizes expertise can exist at any level of our organization, wearing any uniform or none at all. As the briefing concluded, a young technical sergeant approached hesitantly. Ma'am? If I may ask, all those months cleaning floors when you could have been doing this, wasn't that difficult? Knowing what you were capable of, but being treated as invisible? Sophia considered the question carefully. It wasn't about self-pity or resentment. It was about understanding a choice that few in the room could comprehend. There's freedom in invisibility. Sergeant, she replied finally. When people don't see you, they don't limit you with their expectations. They don't challenge your authority because they don't recognize it exists. I accomplished more in 18 months of invisibility than I might have in years of acknowledged position. She glanced around the room, at the officers and technicians now hanging on her every word. The most effective service isn't always the most visible. Sometimes, true leadership happens in the shadows, without recognition or acclaim. What matters is the mission, not who gets credit for accomplishing it. The sergeant nodded slowly, absorbing wisdom that contradicted everything military culture typically celebrated: rank, recognition, advancement. That said, Sophia added with the ghost of a smile, I don't recommend volunteering for janitorial duty as a career advancement strategy. Laughter rippled through the room, breaking the tension and humanizing a figure who had already begun to assume almost mythic proportions in the stories circulating throughout the defense establishment. As the briefing dispersed, General Townsend approached with news that transport to Strategic Command Headquarters was ready. Your team from Ellsworth has already departed. They'll meet you there. Sophia nodded, gathering her materials with the same efficient precision she had once applied to cleaning supplies. I'll need to brief them on what we found here. The patterns are evolving, but the fundamental approach remains consistent. We'll continue implementing your protocols, Townsend assured her. And Colonel, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened after Kandahar. The system failed you. The system is made of people, General, Sophia replied without bitterness. People make mistakes. What matters is how we learn from them. As she prepared to depart Cheyenne Mountain, heading toward new responsibilities at the highest levels of strategic command, Sophia Reeves carried with her not just the technical knowledge that had saved multiple military installations, but the profound wisdom gained from 18 months of invisibility. She had learned to see vulnerabilities that others missed, to value insights from unexpected sources, and to understand that true strength often hides in plain sight. Lessons now being absorbed by a military establishment that had nearly lost her extraordinary capabilities to its own blind spots and assumptions. The cleaning lady they had ignored for years had become the shield protecting America's most critical defense systems. And in doing so, she had taught them all that greatness rarely announces itself. It simply does what needs to be done, whether anyone notices or not. 6 months after the crisis that had revealed her true identity, Colonel Sophia Reeves stood at the podium in the Pentagon's main briefing room, addressing the highest echelons of military leadership. The Joint Chiefs sat in the front row, alongside the Secretary of Defense and representatives from every major intelligence agency. Behind them, rows of senior officers and civilian analysts listened with rapt attention as she outlined the findings of her Strategic Defense Vulnerability Task Force. The final assessment confirms what we suspected, Sophia stated, her voice carrying the natural authority that had always been present, even when she wielded a mop instead of command. The coordinated attacks on our defense infrastructure were state-sponsored, sophisticated, and would likely have succeeded if not for the implementation of non-standard detection protocols. On the large screen behind her, data visualizations illustrated the scale of what they had confronted and prevented. The potential compromise of America's early warning systems, strategic command networks, and missile defense infrastructure would have represented the most significant security breach in decades. But the technical aspects of these attacks are only part of the story, she continued, advancing to the next slide. The more profound vulnerability exposed during this crisis wasn't in our software or hardware. It was in our organizational psychology, in how we determine whose insights matter and whose don't. The room shifted slightly, senior officers exchanging glances. This part of her presentation challenged fundamental aspects of military culture and hierarchy. For 18 months, I submitted detailed security assessments disguised as maintenance requests, Sophia explained, displaying examples on the screen. These contained explicit warnings about the same vulnerabilities that were later exploited. They were filed, acknowledged, and ignored not because the information was incorrect, but because of assumptions about who had provided it. General Richard Montgomery, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. And that's the foundation of your proposed comprehensive security reform? Yes, sir, Sophia confirmed. The CSR initiative restructures how we gather and evaluate intelligence across our entire defense infrastructure. It implements what we're calling perspective diversity, systematically incorporating insights from personnel at all levels, regardless of rank or position. She advanced to the next slide, showing a new organizational framework that challenged decades of established practice. Under this model, security assessments include input from maintenance staff, administrative personnel, and contractors, people who move through our facilities daily, but whose observations we typically discount. You're suggesting we give equal weight to the observations of a janitor and the security officer? Questioned Admiral Hayes, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. I'm suggesting we evaluate information based on its content rather than its source, Sophia clarified. The maintenance technician who services the secure server room every day may notice patterns that a security officer rotating through different posts would miss. The administrative assistant processing visitor badges might identify anomalies that automated systems overlook. She paused, allowing the concept to sink in. After all, Admiral, a cleaning lady noticed the network vulnerabilities that nearly compromised our entire strategic defense system. A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the room, part amusement, part sobering recognition of how close they had come to catastrophe. The CSR initiative has been field tested at 7 installations over the past 4 months, Sophia continued. The results are included in your briefing materials, but I'll highlight the key findings. Security incident reporting increased by 217%. Vulnerability identification improved by 184%. False positives decreased by 63%. The statistics were compelling, even to the most traditional military minds in the room. Numbers spoke a language they all understood. Most significantly, she added, personnel engagement across all levels increased dramatically. When people believe their observations matter, when they're treated as valuable security assets rather than functional equipment, they become active participants in the mission rather than passive executors of assigned tasks. The Secretary of Defense nodded thoughtfully. This represents a significant cultural shift, Colonel. How do you propose implementing it across an organization as vast and tradition-bound as the Department of Defense? Through a phased approach. That begins with our most critical facilities, Sophia replied. Strategic Command, NORAD, and key intelligence centers will serve as implementation models. As the methodology proves itself, we expand outward using a train-the-trainer approach. She advanced to her final slide, a simple but powerful statement. Security is everyone's responsibility. This isn't just a slogan, Sophia emphasized. It's a fundamental reorientation of how we approach defense. It means we stop creating artificial blind spots based on rank or position. It means we recognize that expertise and insight can come from anywhere within our organization. It means we stop rendering people invisible based on the uniform they wear or the job they perform. As the formal briefing concluded and the room transitioned to questions, General Mitchell approached the podium to stand beside Sophia, a public endorsement of her proposals from one of the most respected figures in military intelligence. I've reviewed the CSR initiative in detail, he stated, addressing his peers. While it challenges some of our most established practices, the evidence supporting its effectiveness is irrefutable. Colonel Reeves has developed an approach that not only addresses the technical vulnerabilities in our systems, but the human factors that often determine whether those vulnerabilities are exploited. He turned slightly toward Sophia, his expression reflecting genuine respect. And she developed this approach through an extraordinary personal journey, one that gave her a perspective none of us could have acquired through conventional means. The discussion that followed was rigorous but constructive. Senior officers raised practical concerns about implementation, training requirements, and culture change management. Sophia addressed each question with the same calm precision she had once applied to maintaining the floors at Ellsworth Air Force Base, thorough, methodical, and attentive to details others might overlook. By the session's end, the Joint Chiefs had authorized full implementation of the CSR initiative, beginning with a pilot program at 12 critical defense installations. What had started as one officer's experience of invisibility was becoming a transformative approach to national security. As the room cleared, General Montgomery remained behind, approaching Sophia as she gathered her materials. "Impressive work, Colonel," he said simply. "Not just the technical aspects, but the psychological insights. Few officers would have extracted such profound lessons from what must have been a difficult experience. "Thank you, sir," Sophia replied, "though I wouldn't characterize it as entirely difficult. Challenging, yes, but also illuminating." Montgomery studied her with thoughtful consideration. "Most officers of your caliber would have left service entirely after what happened. Found a lucrative private sector position, written a tell-all book, or both. Instead, you took a maintenance job at the same institution that had failed you." "I never stopped serving, sir," Sophia said, echoing words she had spoken months earlier. "At Ellsworth, the uniform changed, the title disappeared, but the mission remained the same." "And now?" Montgomery asked. "With your name cleared, your contributions recognized at the highest levels, what comes next for you, Colonel Reeves?" It was a question Sophia had been considering since the crisis had thrust her back into visibility. The Pentagon had offered her command positions, intelligence directorships, even a star if she followed the expected path. "I have submitted my proposal along with the CSR initiative," she replied. "I believe I can be most effective leading the implementation team, working directly with the installations where we're changing how security is managed and perceived." "Not a traditional career path for someone with your record," Montgomery observed. "Most officers would be looking at division command, Pentagon assignment, the stars that typically follow." "With respect, sir, traditional paths didn't bring U.S. here," Sophia countered gently. "They didn't identify the vulnerabilities in our systems or the blind spots in our thinking. Sometimes the most important work happens away from the spotlight." Montgomery nodded slowly, a smile of genuine appreciation crossing his features. Like a colonel cleaning floors while quietly protecting her base from cyber attacks. "Exactly. Sir." "Very well, Colonel. Your implementation team is approved. Select your personnel, establish your methodology, and transform how we think about security." He extended his hand. "The institution failed you once. It won't happen again." As Sophia left the Pentagon that evening, the setting sun cast long shadows across the river entrance plaza. Officers and civilian employees streamed toward parking lots and metro stations, their workday complete. Among them moved maintenance staff, security guards, and service personnel, the essential workforce that kept the nation's military headquarters functioning but often went unnoticed by those they supported. Sophia paused, watching this parallel exodus, the visible and the invisible moving through the same space, but occupying different worlds in the minds of many. Her experiences had given her the ability to see both simultaneously, to recognize the artificial barriers that separated people performing different functions, but serving the same mission. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Chun, who had become one of her most trusted team members. "Task force assembly complete. All personnel confirmed. Ready when you are, Colonel." Sophia smiled slightly. The team she had selected for the CSR implementation included not only top security specialists and intelligence analysts, but also former maintenance workers, administrative staff, and IT support technicians, people whose perspectives would never have been included in such a critical national security initiative under traditional approaches. Tomorrow they would begin the work of transforming how America protected its most vital systems, not by adding more technology or more guards, but by changing how people saw each other and whose insights were valued. It was perhaps the most profound security upgrade possible, eliminating the blind spots created by hierarchy and assumption. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.